eventually impact potential ways to improve traffic flow outside Central. And he will share the results of that study, so it's not done yet, when he gets the report in January at best, he thinks. Just briefly touch on the 236-91 light, still slow going because of the utilities there. And then he did talk about a potential, like just sort of threw out some sort of a partnership with the town management and municipal government and some learning opportunities for Marshwood students going forward. So sort of whether that's sort of an internship or some job shadowing, just some interesting stuff to think about going forward. Anything else?
I think you got it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the report of the chair and brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Thank you very much. I would be remiss if I didn't just touch on the events of yesterday. Obviously, early in the morning, there was a phone call that was made to Sanford High School. We were shortly notified by Southborough Police Department of what had occurred. Obviously, as parents, community members, students, faculty, staff, administrators, there's probably no greater fear that you have. To go through that is an extremely unsettling process. Information comes slow at times, and I just think it's important to reiterate to people that when I am in those situations, I need to present facts to people. I can't go on, there's a 75% chance this is a hoax, or it looks like this. I mean, I need to be able to say, this is what the Maine State Police is saying, this is what we've been told, factual information with families. And sometimes that's slower than maybe the news media might be able to get out on a tweet. And then if there's a situation, they can always retract the tweet. And I just never want to be in a situation where I'm providing information that's not true to families. I just think it's the right thing to do. So to measure twice, cut once.
Social media got way out in front of it.
Way out in
Yeah.
front, way out in front, and it's a scary thing, people directly and indirectly, lives will be impacted for that by a long time. As parents, that not knowing and waiting to hear what's happening. As students, being in a situation where I was just talking to everyone on the way in that it's not like a fire drill. It's a very, very different situation, and so there's real trauma that people went through. The reunification site. I mean, there's a lot that went into that, and so. We were in constant communication with our police department. I really want to thank the Elliott South Berwick police departments. They not only had officers on site in Sanford, also were just, obviously increased the patrols in our school district as well. We had some pretty clear expectations that we were going to minimize going outside. We were going to minimize traffic into the buildings just because at that point we just didn't know. We did not go into a full lockdown because I didn't feel like at that point in time, speaking with the police department, that we didn't have enough information and didn't want to create a greater level of panic. And so by just kind of restricting access and having the police officers more visible in the buildings was the decision that we made. As information became more available, we tried to get that out to families, staff, and students as quickly as we could. One of the things in a crisis that you have to understand, though, is that sometimes misinformation gets out way in front of true information, and then people can't disaggregate what happened. And so one of the things that we tried to do was walk around Marshwood High School and go into classrooms to say, look, have you read your emails? Do you have any questions? Let's have a conversation about this so people can have an opportunity to process what they're hearing. Friends, relatives, your brothers, sisters are all involved. And so there's residuals that you don't necessarily think about. And obviously, working with those students when they return, just trying to make sure that their needs are met. Our families were fantastic. I truly appreciate that. Our transportation department was on top of it. Literally we had a bus sitting at the Shaws in Sanford ready to go as the moment's notice that when we had the green light to pick up our students. After the events of yesterday, we had an opportunity to sit down as a school and talk a little bit, the administrative team within the school about what could we do differently, what did we learn, what are some questions that arose from this. Mr. Hoopturk also had a faculty meeting to be able to have some questions asked, to stay vigilant with our training in Alice. That's not a popular thing to talk about. No. It's not anything that anybody wants to think about, but it's something that, reminds you the importance of keeping people safe, and that's why we do those types of things. We are also having a meeting on Tuesday afternoon with the Elliott and South Berwick Police Departments and just kind of processing kind of from their perspective, bringing them into the conversation and kind of talking about what we can learn, because every situation is unique, and it's important to take those opportunities to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep kids safe. So I just wanted to kind of update you where we were as a district. As again, I will try my best to be able to provide information as quickly as I can. One of the things that we thought was really important is that there was about 35 students on our vocational programs that were at the school, and so we tried to call every one of those families individually just to check in with them, just to let them know. And the hard part is, by the time you call the first family to the 35th family, information's changed. Information has evolved. And so that's one thing. The other part is kids have cell phones, and so they're, so parents in many instances know more than I know, because they're there, like, to find out, are we in a lockdown? What does this look like right now? What goes on with our students? So there's just some different things that you just don't think about, and then obviously the residual when kids came back. And so I'd just be more than happy to answer any questions that any of you have and thoughts.
Do we get the sense that the Sanford High School executed their emergency plan well and that it all went smoothly? I got the sense that it was pretty much the case.
I think it went as well as could be expected for having to be tested. I think it's never easy, and
No.
I think you manage those situations as best you can, and I just give their staff and support staff a great deal of credit. One of the factors that I think is important to note is that Sanford was the first school that was called, and it was a very detailed message that was left.
Yeah.
Let me just leave it at that. And so because of that, a huge amount of resources were dispatched to Sanford. As the day went along, more and more of those occurred, and I think upwards of 10 schools is
I think
the last
the number was 11.
11
Yeah.
schools that occurred across the state. I mean, from literally Sanford to Fort Fairfield, I believe. So, I think that was one of the reasons why Sanford was a little bit different, because at that point it was happening. And the other part you have to understand is that those officers are going in and they don't know what's going on, and so they have a systematic approach that they have to go through things, and so that takes time. It's not quick and easy. It's, like I said, it's not like a fire drill, and so there's a protocol that they have to follow, which isn't necessarily on the timeline that people would like to get information. That's just the reality of those types of situations. So at the same time, that's why it's really important that we've had these conversations with our police departments, with our fire departments, to bring them into the buildings and do training within our buildings, to be able to understand the layout of the buildings, understand what the plan may look like, and be able to, to make sure that we're doing any preventative work and training that we can do ahead of time. So, any other questions? Sorry, I wasn't on the agenda, but I just, obviously.
It's
thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Next, I just had asked Heidi to kind of share some of the work that's been going on our professional development days. I just think it's one of those things that's really important to, we talk about our district goals, our district values, and just to see how that really comes to fruition and how we work with staff to be able to build those things. And so, Heidi, I'd love to have you.
Sure. So, let me just see. There's any extras. In your folders, I think Elaine added a document that is says draft on it. It's a curriculum review cycle.
Review cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It's like perfect. Yep, that's it. So, David, if you could advance me one, that would be great. Thanks. So, I wanted to just quickly talk about a couple things. With regard to curriculum, when I gave an update a few months ago, I shared essentially the diagram that's on the last page of the document that you have in front of you. This concept of making sure that we think about and put our curriculum on a regular cycle, so that we are reviewing it and examining it strategically every 4 to 5 years, not sort of willy-nilly trying to do everything at once. And so I just kind of threw that idea out, and I wanted to give you guys a little bit more information. My vision is to take this document and turn it into part of a curriculum webpage, because every year I get a fair number of questions coming from parents or community members about, well, what do you teach? Can I have the 3rd grade curriculum? Can you just copy it for me? Well, it doesn't really work that way, but I'm happy to talk to you about sort of how we make decisions about what we teach. And and the things that drive that. So that's really what this document is intended to capture, is what are the standards that we're obligated to under state law, and then how have we as a district made choices in terms of how we meet those standards from a curriculum standpoint. So whether it's our new math program, or whether it's Komochis as a foundation for our SEL curriculum. And it just kind of has live links in it to each of the programs that we have in place and to the standard sets. And I generally find when I write back to families or community members with all those details, that either they're exhausted by my email and they just stop asking questions, or it answers their questions enough. So I feel like it's good to have that sort of transparency and that information out there. But before I did that, I wanted you guys to see it. And I wanted you to have an opportunity to ask questions, or just sort of kind of proof of concept. Like, do you think this is a good idea?
Can I just ask, so if something comes up, like, say, I don't know, Wabanaki Studies, something prompted a closer look at that, you could shift the timeline?
Yeah, we always,
it's not set in
the best
stone.
laid plans.
Yeah, okay.
It's good to have a plan, but you've always got to be flexible. And the cycles that I try to build respond to the state, because they have our standards on a 5-year review cycle. Yep. So I try to be a year or two off of where they are, because their process takes a while. Mm-hmm. But it's not always perfect. Things happen. And the Wabanaki Studies is a good example. That was actually something that we had started to dig into when the new social studies standards came out prior to COVID. And then, COVID hit, and it wasn't that people stopped thinking about it, that just that work kind of halted. And literally as soon as it came back up, people were like, oh yeah. And they scampered around and were like, oh, we were getting excited about this. Right. So I actually feel really good about where that work is. And our social studies department at the middle school and high school have been talking about it, and the K-5 folks are just running with it, doing some really cool stuff. So that's great. So sort of based on that chart on the last page, if you look at where we are for 22-23, you'll see that the areas that I listed are really, that's what we're doing. So some work has been underway with regard to the K-5 health piece. I know we had talked about that a little bit several months ago. I've been working with, largely with Cindy Travers and with Kate Potvin at Great Works to really talk about what the needs are for our 4th and 5th grade, specifically really looking at that puberty ed piece pretty specifically, and sort of what's already being done. And we've got a nice scope and sequence for 4th and 5th grade that we've mapped out. So it's good to sort of be able to imagine what we'd like. Now we have to figure out how to do it with the staff that we have. So that's where we're at, but I'm hopeful that we'll have a plan in place for springtime to roll that out.
Great.
So that's good. K-5 writing has really been a big focus of the Thursday PLC time with grade levels. And the ELA, the 6 to 12, I've met with both the middle school and high school departments. We've reviewed the new standards, really kind of each department is starting to dig into those and think about how that impacts the units of study that they have in place. Wabanaki Studies we talked about. And then the last one really, we had talked a little bit about a while back, really kind of constantly working on this idea of consistency and cohesion between our two primary schools, and making sure that kindergarten is kindergarten is kindergarten, and second grade is second grade is second grade, and that our teachers have the opportunity to work together, so that when we're making decisions about writing or spelling or Wabanaki experiences, that those are happening for all of our students, not just in one school or the other. So that's another piece that's been really helpful. Do you guys have questions about any sort of, these are the topics we're sort of focused on this year?
And I believe we're going to talk about, I think it's the next meeting, we're doing some of the work around what we're doing, particularly with kindergarten over the summertime. So just so you know that work's happening.
You can go to the next slide, David. Thanks. So shifting gears to the professional development side of things, there's really kind of two big capacity levers that we have for PD. One being our Thursday PLC time, which is super important, and it really feels like we're back to where we were before COVID, like using this time for what it was intended for, which is collaboration, which is really, getting back to our district goals of really looking at student data, figuring out where kids are and what they need next. That's been a big focus of Thursdays at the grade level, at the department level. I've been in and meeting with several departments looking at NWEA data and helping them figure out what's there and what they can do with that information. Again, aligning to new standards, that work happens on Thursdays. Planning instruction based on new standards, based on new programs that we might be trying to implement. And then lastly, that cross-building work, which the teachers have really been missing. I think that was a huge thing that was sacrificed during the pandemic, was that time to talk across buildings, and I think people got really isolated. So we've built in a once a month-ish time for cross school, so middle school and high school departments working together, second grade team getting together and all working together. So that's been good. It's a little tricky with Great Works. The fifth grade teachers would really like to work with the sixth grade teachers, but their time is different. So we've come up with some strategies to work around that, to get them together a couple times later in the year. So that's that's really been the focus of Thursdays. And then one more slide, David. Thanks. And then we've had our 2 teacher workshop days, which it just seems like there's never enough time to do everything we want to do, but this just really captures what we've done with the 2 days that we had. There's been a focus on staff culture and wellness, just bringing people together. The equity work has been fantastic with Jermaine. I can't say enough. I think this has been the best work he's done with us, particularly the second session that he recently did. He did some work with us in August, and then in October, November, this last session was really all about case studies and scenarios, and really looking at how can we use situations to really challenge ourselves to think about what biases might be present in our systems, and really powerful. Can't say enough good things about that. And he's been coming in, and he came in and talked to the Danish kids, and I think there's some desire to get him to come in and work with some high school kids too, which is great. Alice in crisis planning, that has been an ongoing part of the work, and the buildings have been doing a nice job of managing that and working with their building-based teams to figure out ways to practice and get new staff up to speed.
Can I say one thing about the ALICE? Just remember that when we built the ALICE program, we did it from the train-the-trainer model. So every building has 5 to 7 to 8 trainers on site. So there are teachers at the middle school who've gone through the training. So it's peers teaching peers. It isn't like there's a district-wide, everyone get into a room. Obviously it's a different conversation at Marshall Great Works School than maybe it is at Marshall High School.
Sure, of course.
The MTSS work, that's that multi-tiered systems of support. So again, going back to our district goals for the year around, meeting students where they are, helping students bounce back from any pandemic loss, really figuring out how we can wrap our arms around kids at all levels. This is a place I think our K-5 buildings have done a really good job with historically. It's natural, whereas it's been harder for middle school and high school to figure out the right structures to make this multi-tiered systems of support work effective. One of the cool things we did was we partnered with Panorama, who you're familiar with because that's the company we use to do our stakeholder surveys. But they also have an SEL survey that we're utilizing this year, and they have a student dashboard. So it integrates with Infinite Campus, and you can see a dashboard which shows you for any given student, do they have an attendance issue? What are their grades, test scores, SEL response, like how did they score, behavioral data. It's all integrated into a dashboard, so a team can look at that and look at a child across multiple sort of lenses, which can be very helpful. And so that's been pretty well received at the middle school and high school by the teachers. We talked a little bit about data. I think the 2 most powerful data sets we've been working with this fall have been the NWEA data. Particularly at the high school, they haven't had a lot of NWEA data in the past, so that they've been really familiarizing themselves. And then the My House Youth Health Survey data. We've also, buildings have worked in some curriculum and instructional goal work on those 2 PD days. There's been some math PD. Great Works has done some cool work with Ann Stiers and their outdoor ed program. We've done some work with Lexia, and then teachers have also been working on the Wabanaki work. And on the 7th, the last thing is we did like a Summer Institute Redux, and it was a regional virtual PD opportunity that was optional for different buildings and different staff who had the flexibility within their day. And I think we had about 65 teachers that were able to participate in that as well. So that's what's been going on.
So we really have a tiered approach. There are certain things, for instance, where we said non-negotiables is that on these days we are going to do our work with Alice, and we're going to do our work with equity in creating a safe learning environment for all students. And so Heidi would schedule that, and then we would say, okay, what are the building initiatives? And so the MTSS program at Central School is much easier to get off the ground because that's inherently how an elementary school works, where the middle school and high school, it's a much heavier lift, and so there may be more times allocated at the high school than the middle school. You see the work that Jerry's doing with Ann Stiers, like that's a building initiative. So we're trying to balance what are the district initiatives, what are our district goals, what are our non-negotiables, and then what are those building things that are really important to be able to give those buildings the individual opportunities, for their own excitement. The other thing, just to let you know, is the MIAS that's the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, and so that's really a survey that was given last November, and that talks about at-risk behaviors, depression, anxiety, alcohol use, drug use, tobacco, vaping, connectiveness to school. Next board meeting, Sally Mannanen is going to be here. Sally is with us, the Choose to Be Healthy Coalition. She and Gina Brodsky will be here, and they're going to present the data from Marshall High School, Marshall Middle School. We're going to review that. 3 years ago was the first time we've ever shared the data kind of district-wide, and so we're going to do that again and be able to talk about some of the work that we've been doing around that information.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. Did you have a question,
That
Rebecca?
was my question. I wasn't
Oh.
familiar with that. So.
There you go.
Thank you.
All right, so that's all. If you don't have other questions, I just wanted to give you a little update.
Yep. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The curriculum review and approval process, we have a new
It's an
business
action
item.
item, yeah.
We're going to vote on that later this evening under new business.
Yes. So part of what we've talked a lot about is transparency. And so I really feel like, as I kind of give myself a self-assessment, I really feel like one of the things that I've done well is be able to take the budget and explain it to people that first meeting in March. One of the things I don't think that I've done a good enough job with is giving people kind of like what are the stepping stones along the way of how we build the budget. And so we've gone back to the October 15th enrollment 3 times just to kind of update you on that, not just because I was like, hey, that sounds like a good thing to do. Like, I really want to show you that's the importance of it. The next step in the process, Ryan's going to share with you of how we start carrying forward and do a projected enrollment. So what I'm trying to do is to show, as our budget process goes along, this is where we are in our budget process, just so that everybody understands as we go, kind of create that teachable path, so people can see all of a sudden in March 8th, whatever it is, 6th, oh, I understand how we got here. So anyway, Ryan, if you could share that with us, that would be great.
So you should all have in your folders, it's this document, it's a spreadsheet. Kind of has a few years history plus the current year's enrollment. So the 2023 column being our October 1 certified enrollment. So it kind of breaks it down by the different schools and the different grade levels. Starting with Elliott Elementary, what we typically do for pre-K and K is we kind of use a 2-year average. This is just raw data that was plugged in. One of the things we'll probably look at as we go down through, just to kind of give you an idea of how our process works. If you look at the pre-K enrollment for 2023, we're at 59 students. If you use the 2-year average, that cohort of students moving to K would be 60. That's probably not a typical growth. If you kind of look at pre-K to K over the years, we probably usually see between like 6 and 10 students. So we'd probably want to override that 2-year average. Like I said, this is just kind of the raw data as we have it right now. But those are the processes that we kind of go through as we look at the different grade levels. Once we get past pre-K and K, Most of those enrollments aren't going to fluctuate greatly. There could be a couple students move in, a couple students move out, but for the most part, we can take a individual cohort of like moving that K and moving them down to first grade, and that usually is a pretty good number for us. So we kind of can do that at all the different schools and kind of work through the process. The only other thing that we usually change, if you look on the second page, if you look at the 8th grade students this year, we have 173. We typically see a small cohort or a small number of students move out of district between middle school and high school. Either they attend a private high school or things like that. So we've kind of averaged that out over the years, and we say it's usually about 4 students. So we take that 8th grade enrollment and we reduce it by 4. So that's the one kind of grade level that doesn't look the same. So the next step in this process is, like I said, is we'll kind of go to the grade by grade and just say, do we anticipate any changes? We'll look at the things like the pre-K and K enrollment and kind of say, is the 2-year average good, or do we want to adjust? And then you can see on the right-hand side, we have our staffing and our allowable class size ranges. So we look at what our class size ranges are. We try to staff our classes kind of in the middle of those ranges. So if you're looking at a K class, our allowable class size range is 14 to 18. We try to get something close to 16 now. Sometimes that works wonderfully and sometimes it doesn't, but we try to do our best to kind of stay in the middle of those ranges. And you can see we have what our current staffing levels are, the FY 22-23 staff, that's what our current staffing levels are. And we'll just kind of say, okay, what do we need to staff this class, and how many teachers do we need? And then we kind of figure out, are we changing? And there's another column on this spreadsheet that's hidden, but it basically, once we put the staffing needed in, it will tell you we're going to have 4 classes of 16 and 1 class of 17 or whatever. Like, it'll break it down so we can kind of see that. So that's the process that we go through.
One thing I want to add is that sometimes you can get lost in numbers. And so if you are looking at, let's just take Elliott Elementary School, and we're going to say, next year kindergarten has a projection of 60 students. Well, if it's 14 to 18 students and we're in the middle, that would be 15, so we would need 4 teachers. And like in the elementary school, you can say that's easy. This doesn't seem really hard, and that is relatively easy. But you've also got to factor in that there's specials in there that are required by Maine state law, so there's some other factors. When you get to Marshwood High School, you can't take the 169 students that are going to be freshmen and say, well, if 20 is the average class size, we only need 7 teachers. Because what you have to do then is you have to be able to look at the curriculum, the remediation, and then kind of there's some cost analysis that you have to do, and that's why kind of the class selection process is so important at the high school. And so, for instance, what does that mean? It means, kind of philosophically, we talk a lot about, the upper end of the class size, where if you have 25 or greater, the schools are allowed to go 1 over, but if we go 2 over, we have to bring it to the board for approval. We did that with the AP Physics earlier this year. But it also goes the other way when we have class sizes of 7, 8, 9, what are those things? And so what the board has traditionally said is, John, the AP courses are a little bit different. We want to be careful that we don't want to lose those things, but there's also a threshold where we can't run classes of 8 students, and so all of a sudden offerings are going to be taken away. And so we might lose a French 5, or it might be an AP Art Studio, those types of things. Those are kind of the assessments that we have to make. In addition, you have to factor in students going to vocational. And so that's a whole nother piece. And so some of the work that we're doing, I actually was meeting about it on Friday, and Kim and I talked about it quite a bit, as Heidi, of really taking those graduation requirements and finding, let's just say I'm a fire science person at Sanford Regional Technical Vocational Center. Are there any all-college requirements other than my electives that I might be able to get checked off as I'm there? And so maybe a half credit of physical education may make a lot of sense if I can show that because of the physicalness of that course. And so if I can get that half credit done, that makes it easier for a child to be able to access the vocational program. Because right now, Lauren, you probably know this better than anybody, it is tricky at times when you're using all your electives, and so your kids are scrambling, to be able to get back and forth with classes. It does get really tricky. So we're just trying to do some of those things. So those are all factors that kind of go into this, and that's where we are with those conversations right now. So it really is kind of an assessment of what do we need, what do we want, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses. So it does get a little bit more difficult as you get to the high school, middle school. Any questions about any of this work? So we will meet over the next couple of weeks with the principals. They'll be kind of given these numbers. They'll look at that. They'll also have a chance to kind of look at, they know the second grade better than we know the second grade. And so they'll say, last year we talked about, there's a grade level that was, severely impacted by COVID just because of the way it fell. They were actually kindergartners and they missed out. And so so we need to be able to look at the data there to say what makes the most sense as we kind of go through this. So so we can make a presentation that makes sense to all of you.
Great.
Very clear.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
You ready? Okay. I am really excited. We've really, one of the things that the board's talked about for a long time is how do we honor student voice? And so one of the presentations that we asked for this year is to have our student government come present and kind of talk about some of the work that they're doing, some of the initiatives, and what's happening with student government. So we're going to turn it over to all of you. So thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Eva Therian. I'm the senior president of student government here at Marshwood High School. And we're here tonight just to give you a little presentation about who student government is, how we work, what the different pieces are, and some of our current projects or initiatives. So if you guys just want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Bison.
I'm Rowan Waddell.
I'm Riley St. Pierre.
And I'm Sophie Lucena.
So all three of them, they're members of our executive board. As you know, Rowan's the school board rep, and Morgan Decker here is our advisor. Yes, of course.
So I let them step right up because really for my role is like a back seat to guide and advise, and so you're going to hear mostly from them, but I really appreciate all the hard work, and they have blown me away just in what they've accomplished. So I just want to thank you all for what you do.
Thank you. Next slide, please. It's just table of contents. Next one, please. Thank you. All right, so what is student government? So we're a group that serves as a sort of a pipeline from students to the administration. So if students have a problem or something they want to see added or changed to the school, they can come to us, we'll meet about it, and then we'll take it up to higher administration. Same goes for teachers as well. So if teachers have something they want to see added or changed, they can come to us, and we'll bring it up there. So we meet regularly with the principal, the vice principal, and other administration. Next, please. So who is student government? We're made up of a few positions. So myself, the senior president. We have a junior president, Lily Hammond. She couldn't be here with us tonight, so she'll take my role when I graduate this year. We have our executive board. Here are some representatives of that. And we meet once a week on Tuesdays before school to plan our agenda for our upcoming meeting. And also we just can serve as supports for each other, have discussions, bounce ideas around. Like I mentioned, we have a general assembly, so that's everyone in Student Gov. So we meet once a week on Wednesdays, and at our general assembly meetings, we work in committees. So we have our policy committee, our student life committee, we have a green committee, a mural committee, and just this year we added a tech and communications committee. So General Assembly splits off into committees, and each committee works on a initiative or a project, and usually they have many initiatives going at a time. And this year we started working with the senior class president because oftentimes we intersect on projects, so we're able to get Garrett Hatch his voice as well. We have the student school board representatives, as you know. And this year we also started working with the Environment and Sustainability Club because many of our members float between each clubs. And then we have monthly advisory meetings. So students from each advisory come, we have a meeting in the auditorium, and it's really helped us get a wider range of student voice. That's something that has been lacking because oftentimes freshmen can't make late night meetings, but sports players can't do after school meetings. So the advisory time's a great place for us to brainstorm and hear all student voices. Next, please. So next we're gonna just talk about some current initiatives we have running. So
So I'm going to quickly talk about No Plastic November. So this is a month-long pledge that we started in collaboration with the Environment and Sustainability Club in hope of promoting a greener lifestyle in the school community. Students pledge to not use single-use plastic by writing their names on a ticket. Tickets are drawn every week, and winners receive a variation of fun prizes for their participation. I happened to be the first winner last week, and I got called down to the office and won a pretty flower. So I think it's a good way to get involved and a good environment to have in our community.
Student government was asked to plan this month's Hawk Blocks. Our first Hawk Block, we did a voting ballot, like a mock election within all the advisories. We just actually got the results in, and we had for New Hampshire, we had a New Hampshire one as well as a Maine one, and we had Shelley Pingree and Janet Mills as the mock election winners of the school. We then had a Veterans Day Hawk Block, and our last one will be a Giving Thanks Hawk Block as well to finish it off.
And Mr. Hookturp, this year, he's tasking each club or group to plan a month's Hawk Block. So it was super cool to do November because there's a bunch of different holidays and things like that. Next, we have the mural project. So that's been many, many years in the works. And finally, this year, it's coming together. So we've been tasked with making a mural outside of the school counseling, student support services. So we're going to be making a mural that incorporates that message, and we've got the green light to do murals like all around the school, but that'll be our first one. So that's super exciting. We're working with Art Club for that. We're sending out a Google document to get, we have like a list of concepts for the students to vote on what they want to see. So that's super cool, and I'm so excited that it's actually happening. Now peer tutoring.
Okay, so me and Sophie are two of the sort of leaders of peer tutoring, and it kind of, well, last year it was a very, I'd say it struggled a little bit, especially, I mean, part of it was due to COVID, and a lot of it was kind of Ali Aragoni kind of ran it by herself, and basically most of it, from what I heard, was tutors and the students that needed help with subjects, kind of coordinating meeting times through emails and all that stuff. And it just it could have used a little bit more organization. And this year we have Miss Martinson has really took that on, and she has helped a lot with organizing stuff. She's created a whole schedule of all the tutors to come in. Basically, she's taken all the study halls that they have, and she scheduled them to spend basically a month of their study halls in here to help out any students that come in, because now that we don't have to have study halls in here anymore, this is basically just a place where students can come if they need help with something. And so she's tried to, account for what subjects the tutors are good at teaching, so that she has, in every period, there's like someone that can help with any subject that's a student might need help in. And any students that come in and spend their study halls in here can get community service hours as well for doing that. So it is a really, it's working pretty well. There's been a few times where she's pulled me out of my study hall to come help with something, and I think I'm scheduled for December, so I'll be in here during my study hall in December. But yeah, I think it's working really well. And the one thing that we're trying to work on right now is to get more communication with teachers, because oftentimes teachers send in reports of students that they think are struggling or need help in their classes, because kind of the biggest issue is that a lot of students just aren't showing up. So a lot of the people that are coming to tutor are just sitting here doing nothing a lot of times. But now that quarter one's over and a lot of the grades are being put in, we think that the teachers will start to, identify what students are struggling and are needing this help tutor. So.
Thank you. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we just made a communication/technology committee, and that this year was a big thing. We realized, there's no real place for students to see sports game times and school deadlines and when events are happening around the school. And we have a student government website, but we just like haven't really been utilizing it, in my opinion. So we're hoping somehow to make that a hub for students to be able to come and see what if they need to know when their midterm is or need to know when the football game is, they can come and see that there. And I think that would be really helpful. And that's something I'm excited about. I'm on that committee, and I'm excited for the future. And then our upcoming projects, we're reviewing the school handbook. Basically, it's just really outdated, and we haven't done like a formal look at what's in there in a long time. So we're looking at that and seeing how we can make it more current. And an example of that includes like the dress code. Like there's no real guidelines to what the dress code is, and sometimes it's an unequal situation for students who get dress coded. So that's something that we're trying to look at and review and figure out how we can make that more consistent and equitable for all students.
Another project we've started working on is writing a grant for the Marchwood Education Foundation for more flexible and just general seating around the school. I think our goal is to kind of create some more spaces that students can kind of de-stress and try and incorporate some of that into like the wellness theme, and getting students, also a place students can kind of socialize a little, like some healthy socialization, because I think there's kind of been a lack of wanting to collaborate from students since COVID has happened. So overall, we're just trying to provide students some more comfort in school so that they can better focus and feel good while they're here.
Yeah, and I believe I might have forgotten to mention it earlier. We have a wellness committee. That's something that was in the past. Last year we did a few wellness hawk blocks, so a bunch of activities and events centered around like mental health and support, and those were super successful. We had like kids playing Foursquare outside and just like having a great time, or we had kids inside doing a blind food taste test. Like it was just a really cool experience for students to try a wide variety of things. And this year my brain is completely blanking on. Oh, we spoke at the wellness night, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
We spoke at the wellness night, and we had a table, and that was a big success. I think a lot of people benefited from that, and I personally learned a lot. Anything you want to add about our initiatives? Awesome. Next slide, please. So that's all. Thank you so much. If you have any questions that you think of in upcoming days, you can email myself or Ms. Decker. But if you have any questions right now, ask away.
Eva, are we gonna do a wellness day again? I guess I was just sitting here looking at all of you, like I don't even know if any of you have ever even done a wellness day, because probably your freshman year was the first year of COVID, so you didn't have that in the spring. Is there plans to bring that back?
I personally don't. I've never had a wellness day, but there is talk. We talked about it last year. We didn't have the capacity to do it, but I think that's something that we would like to do.
Yeah, that's where we ended up using the 2 different hot blocks last year in lieu of an entire day, and instead of like changing around big schedules, we ended up doing 2 smaller portions. But it was a conversation of like, how do we revamp that and like get students involved in kind of trying to get people to see it a little bit like as something that's to be excited about, something that they can look forward to. So there's been some conversation around too, like around the school spirit, just like maybe doing some activities like that. So I think there's some potential for it for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I was just wondering where you get funding from to do any of your little projects or initiatives.
That's a good question. We don't really have like specific funding. Like we don't have a budget, and a lot of our initiatives don't necessarily require funding. Like it's like reviewing policy, which like we don't need to fundraise for that kind of stuff. But I know our No Plastic November, we've had talks with the Environment and Sustainability Club about maybe doing some fundraisers, and like selling bracelets, but we have to have money to buy the bracelets. So we've been having talks about doing fundraisers, but like we're writing a grant to MEF for the flexible seating. Yeah, but we really haven't come across a whole lot. I know in the past we somehow bought all the stuff for the mural, but I was not here when that was purchased. Do you know how we?
Most things have just been approved through the
Okay.
Mr. Hooter had an idea this year about, he said it in some context of like if we ended up hosting, if a bunch of different student organizations hosted like a school dance or some kind of fundraiser, then we could have a student organization fund, and then those organizations, so the GSA or the Civil Rights Team and some other groups, we could all kind of have a pooled fund that then they could propose like, hey, we would like funds for this, and then support it. So we'd be looking at something like that. But up till now, we haven't had any specific like funding source. It's mostly been initiatives that we propose, and then there's been approval for it.
There's been approval. Cool.
The student government website is linked off the high school website, yes? There's a hot link there? Because I wouldn't want to have to type that into my browser.
No, it actually hasn't been published yet. It's something that's like newer this year that we're trying to play around with as it came up through the tech and students wanting access to announcements and some other things. So we're still kind of in development of it.
Okay.
And then wanted to make sure that it gets out to everybody.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
But when that is done, we can send out an email to everyone, just being like, hey, this is something we have going on.
I just think this is a great example, though, of just what you were just talking about with the funding and where did things come from, of like one of those costs of COVID where you go into crisis mode and you go into, this is what we're trying to do, but you lose kind of that institutional knowledge of, hey, what's a wellness day? This is how we planned it. This is what we did. This is what the thought process of it. And so trying to take some time now to really reevaluate what's most important and be able to kind of solidify those things again. So that, this is the work that's happening across the district, is like, okay, wait a second, we used to take these college trips with all of our sophomores.
Right.
We haven't done that in 4 years. Does that mean we don't do it anymore? Of course not. Let's get it back on the radar to have
Gotta
these,
figure it out
these
how.
really
Right,
important
yeah.
things. So.
Right.
And that's something we've definitely been noticing, like, across clubs throughout the school. We hope to make, like, a club hub, like, basically a spreadsheet with the presidents or the leaders of the club and then their advisors, because oftentimes, like, before COVID, clubs had, like, not specific activities, but, like, this club would always do this, and that was their big fundraiser, but this, coming back from COVID, it gets lost in translation and taken by class officers and everything like that. So we hope to maybe form, like, a committee that meets once a month of all the club advisors to just hear where everyone's at, or a spreadsheet so students themselves can say, I'm interested in the Interact Club or the Dungeons and Dragons Club. How do I get in contact with those people? So, yeah. Thank you so
Good idea.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was great.
Do not feel pressured to stay. If you would like to stay and watch the entertainment, you are certainly welcome to do that. If you'd like to leave, you certainly can do that as well.
Rowan has to stay.
Yeah, Rowan has to stay.
That's true.
Perfect. Next on the agenda, I just wanted to share, Mr. Buzzell shared with me that our football program was awarded the Sportsmanship Award. And so pretty uncommon, certainly for our school anyway, to be recognized to win 3 Sportsmanship Awards in a fall season. That's a pretty big statement, and I do think it kind of goes to the work that we're trying to do as a district, talking about civility and taking care of each other. So congratulations.
For sure.
Last Wednesday night, we took a chance to do kind of our really big community event, and we had a Supporting Your Anxious Child presentation by Stephen Quinlan. Our wellness committee had been working on this probably for 3 months now. I just want to give a huge shout out to Lisa and Jen being big driving forces, great ideas. Nina and Jerry for really being able to kind of get things together. Choose to Be Healthy was involved. Chartwell's did a magnificent job. Student government did a great job. There's a lot of community groups that kind of came in and were a part of the work that we were doing. And so about 65 people were there that evening, which is fantastic. We did a exit survey. We got 4 responses, and I'll share them. I think as older adults, the taking the picture of the barcode, that was a little bit of a change. But all very, very positive. I think people would like to see more.
Yes.
Really talking about a couple of requests about how to manage like tough interpersonal relationships, bullying, how to sense of belonging, and so that was some of the feedback that we received. I know other people were there. Just love to, if anybody has anything.
So I would have added that I was there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought no better indication of how badly needed it actually was than the kinds of questions that parents were asking the speaker in the question. And I mean, they were making themselves very vulnerable in these questions too. It was, I think the value of having the thing was demonstrated in that question and answer section. It was
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, I would agree.
I
Jen,
thought
you
it was
did,
great,
you know-
yeah, for the first go, and thank you for supporting it and just saying, yes, let's do it. That was, I think, it was really good to just finally be able to just, let's just try it type of thing and see how it goes. And like Joe said, I think we could have probably sat there all night just doing a Q&A, really, which sort of then had my wheels turning about, well, what could we make this look like, even if it wasn't another night like that, but what sort of, is it a support group, or what can that look like? What can the resource be going forward? So that was good.
I think we had some questions about, why didn't we videotape the presentation? And the reason we didn't videotape it is because people were pretty vulnerable and shared some pretty real emotions and questions and really looking for some honest feedback, and it really just wouldn't be appropriate to put that out to the public. If people were there, they certainly, I think, would all understand what it was like, but it was really important for people to take that opportunity and take a chance. So, again, I thought it was great. I was really, got some fantastic feedback around Chartwells in particular. People saying, hey, I didn't know that you could do this. I didn't know you had the smoothies and just kind of some other options that people just weren't aware of the offerings that we had. That was something that was kind of a nice surprise. Chase, their executive chef, came in from Connecticut to kind of help with that day. So they got rave reviews on their Asian dressing, I believe they called it. That was really good with the salad. So there was a lot of questions about that, is what they called it. So.
Yeah.
Anything else from the board with that? Okay.
It was excellent.
Our plan is to do something again, January, February. That would be the hope. I think one of the things that helped us is we kind of hit a sweet spot where it was kind of a quiet time district-wide. It was, the musical hadn't started yet. Athletic seasons were kind of winding down. It was just a kind of a good spot. So if we can try to find that, typically that first week in March, end of February is kind of a good time where things kind of slow down a little bit. So that may be a time where we'll meet and kind of process after next wellness committee meeting. Yep. Time for student reports.
All right, I'm going to be reading the report tonight since it's a little shorter and since Rowan took on the task of being a part of the presentation tonight. Sports is really short, just some preliminary stuff. Boys and girls lacrosse meetings happened this week just to discuss the upcoming season. Indoor track starts in 2 weeks. Boys and girls basketball have begun practicing and are excited to start their season. Ice hockey and wrestling have also started practicing, and the ski team starts when we return from Thanksgiving break. As for...
It's not official, so we can't say it.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Extracurriculars. Band and chorus are still fundraising for their trip to New York. They had a bed sheets fundraiser recently that raised over $700. Thursday, December 15th, is the first winter concert at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. Select Chorus has started. There are 8 talented individuals who will perform in both concerts this year, and senior Lauren Cruz will accompany them on at least one piece on the piano. Civil rights team is preparing their department presentations that discuss how staff can deal with the usage of slurs in the building. GSA applied for an MEF grant to fund the Pride Dance that they are sponsoring in June, and they received it, so congrats to them. An informational meeting for the Hawk Buddies program will be held tomorrow, November 17th, after school in Miss Wilkie's room. Quiz Bowl team applied to be on the televised quiz show, and they were accepted.
Cool.
On December 8th at 3:45, they will face John Bapst High School at a Lewiston Filming Center. The team consists of Lauren Cruz, Riley St. Pierre, Leah Madison, myself, and the 2 alternates are Will Sandusky and Kaylee Gilbert. And lastly, the Can We project happened on Thursday, the 9th. It was an in-school retreat that students could apply to. 19 students ended up participating, which is much more than last year at our first retreat. They participated in discussions on civil discourse and expressing yourself better. There will be a second retreat on December 2nd to pick up where we left off. So that is all I have tonight.
Awesome, thank you.
I have about 3 questions, if
Okay.
I can.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just that a lot of that stuff was of
Yeah.
interest. So The Quiz Bowl 12A to 3:45, that's when the event will take place, but not when it will first air on TV, is that right?
That's the
It
filming,
airs in
That's when it-
the spring.
In the spring, got it, okay, thank you.
And if any of you want to come, you are more than welcome to cheer me on.
So fun.
Annabelle, it is an arduous process. I'm just telling you, to go sit and watch it, it's not.
The civil rights team's presentations on how to handle slurs in the classroom, I'd love to be a fly on the wall. I don't know how to make that happen, but
Well, I could send you the presentations. I know that I'm going to be working on them.
okay, that would be cool.
We have to send out a letter letting them know we're going to be infiltrating their meetings. So there's going to be, I think, 2 students assigned to each department. I know I'm doing the history department. I couldn't tell you who else is doing
No,
it,
that's all right.
but so yeah, I will send out, if you guys want, the presentation.
Would love to
and
see the
stuff.
materials, absolutely. That'd be great, thank you.
Great.
Yep.
Awesome, thank you.
And can I just ask, the Can We project, is that like an outside something, or is there an in-school advisor for that, or how does
So there's 2 teachers who are a part of it. Mrs. Hemker and Mr. Sanzone are the teacher members, but there's a man named John Holdridge who runs. I forget what it's called, but they do it every year. It's a 2-day long civil, the youth summit. And he runs that as well, and he's from, what's the school? Waynfleet. And him and the old principal of Waynfleet came down, and they ran the project, and they're partnershiped with Narrative 4, and one of the activities that we did was telling someone else's story, but in your perspective. After hearing it, it was a cool opportunity. I did much better this year than I did last year. So that was nice to see. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. We have not received any correspondence upon which to report, and so we'll move into the reports of the committees. Finance and Facilities met earlier this evening. I'll do the numbers and the facility stuff, and Rebecca, you're going to do the transportation and food service stuff, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Starting with the numbers, so we're about $1 million ahead of revenues on expenditures. That's largely due to some local entitlement payments that are behind and semester fund receipts that have been slow. It's causing the cash balance to get to a place where we have to be careful, and that leads to a discussion around taking another revenue anticipation note out, which we will vote on later in new business. Basically a loan that would allow us to draw on those funds should our cash balance dip to a point where we wouldn't, for instance, be able to make payroll. We have a 3 payroll month coming up in December, as a for instance. So in the meantime, of course, everything's being done to address getting those revenues that are due to us in, so that we can get caught up. Adult education, we've got a subsidy payment coming in December. It's running a little bit to the good. That should bring it well up to the good, and then it will sort of glide path back down to 0 by the end of the year, which is what typically happens. Food service is a little bit in the negative right now, but we're projecting operating profits to come. That will be offset a little bit by some money we have to invest in some machines, but we expect to finish to the good this year as well. Federal grants, there are some revenues coming in. They didn't make the October report, but they're starting to trickle in, so that we should get caught up on that. In terms of our general fund, it looks like we're very close to where we need to be in terms of expenditure of total budget. And the cash flow projection I talked about already. I think that is pretty much it for the numbers. Facilities, we were doing some irrigation work and accidentally punched through a sewer line, and so that has been dealt with. We've got insurance companies talking to insurance companies, so we're hopeful that the cost of that will get covered. We've been looking at electricity costs. We had previous meeting proposed to lock in for a couple of years on our rate. We got a presentation earlier this evening from Ryan on options for installation of solar panels on the premises. It looks like a large project with about a $4 million outlay, and with about an 18-year payback period on a 20-year lifetime. Doesn't look like it's the right thing to do at this time, given that we are where we are with the solar farm that we've engaged with. So I think we're going to stay the course for now and just keep an eye on that. There's talk of possibly engaging to do a small pilot project with a smaller solar array behind the central office. So we'll look into that later. We got an update on the situation with the Marshwood High School boilers. Those boilers are now 23, coming up on 24 years old, and are next in line to be replaced. There's a little bit of a thing we have to do here. What's been recommended is the boilers that are the same as the ones in 3 of our other buildings that have been installed over the past 4 or 5 years. They're smaller than the 2 large units that Specialty Services really doesn't like. The downside on the smaller ones is that they may be going end of life soon, and as a result, we're going to have to actually acquire the 4 small boilers about a year in advance of when they can actually get installed. So we're looking at ways to deal with that. I think that's pretty much it on the facility side. Rebecca, did you want to do transportation?
Yes, yes.
Just go ahead.
Well, we definitely still have a driver shortage for our buses, so we're currently training 2 additional drivers, so we're still looking for some more. The first of the 2 buses that we purchased was delivered. As far as the food service update, we're currently working on adding the breakfast cart at the middle school, and we're working with Chartwells on the meals, or figuring out our meals per labor hour, because that will dictate if we're adequately staffed and in the cafeteria. And we're also looking on prioritizing some of the line upgrades that we have and the things that we want to put into the schools, like adding the tray holder at the elementary school.
Yep.
So that kids can put their trays on. So just trying to figure out which we need to prioritize in that regard. And that's at the high school and at Central Elementary School.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any questions about that? Okay. Ed policy will next meet on November 30th. We have a bunch of second reads to do tonight. And I think wellness next meets on December 7th, so we'll get a report out on both of those committees subsequent to those meetings. That concludes the report of the committees and brings us to new business. We'll start with those second readings. May I have a motion, please, with regard to the second reading of JICIA?
I'll move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy JICIA, weapons, violence, and school safety.
I'll second.
Jen, thank you. No changes since last time. We discussed this at our last meeting. Comments or questions from the board? In that case, all in favor? Oh,
Under
hang on.
disciplinary action, it just reads a little bit strange on the second line, and/or discipline students of students. Do you just want to take out one of the students?
Oh, good catch. Schools may engage students in restorative intervention and/or discipline students. Yeah, the second.
It should be in
just get-
discipline of students.
Just get rid of students altogether.
Yeah.
So
I
just
think that the
students who
elimination of
violate-
of students, that's not, yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Of students?
Yep.
Yeah, that second of students.
Elaine, do you have that? Number 4, disciplinary action, on the second line, it says, just after the yellow, discipline students, and then there's an of students directly after that, if you could just eliminate the of students.
Good catch, Kate, thank you.
Lisa would have caught it.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
She's probably clapping for you right now.
Okay, anything else? All in favor? That's 4-0, thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, with regard to JICIA-R?
I move to approve the second reading and adoption of policy JICIA-R, weapons, violence, and school safety administrative procedure.
I second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. Questions or comments? No changes since last time? All in favor? That is 4-0, thank you very much. A motion, please, with regard to JICIA-E1.
I'll move to approve the second reading and adoption of new policy JICIA-E1, Weapons, Violence, and School Safety Report Form of Dangerous Behavior by Students.
Second, Jen?
Thank you, Jen. Comments or questions? All in favor? 4-0. Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, with regard to JICDA?
I move to approve the second reading and adoption of new code JIC.
You're fine.
Yeah,
I
sorry,
misspoke.
okay.
You're fine. I
Okay.
misspoke.
The current code is JICDA, Student Code of Conduct.
I'll second Kate.
Thank you, Kate. Again, no changes since last meeting.
Correct.
Okay, questions or comments? No? Okay. All in favor? That's 4-0. Thank you. We have a motion, please, with regard to rescinding JICDA.
I move to rescind policy JICDA.
I'll second
Kate,
Kate.
thank you. Now, this is the policy that the three things we just voted on
That's
replace,
correct.
Mhm.
and we couldn't rescind it until we had this in place.
In place, that's
Right.
correct. We only need to do this once to resend it.
Comments or questions? All in favor? That's 4-0, thank you. Motion, please, with regard to JIC-R.
I move to approve the second reading and adoption of new policy JIC-R, procedure addressing reports of dangerous student.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. No changes, comments or questions? All in favor? That is 4-0 as well, thank you. Motion, please, with regard to JIC-E1.
I move to approve the second reading and adoption of policy JIC-E1, Student Code of Conduct Report Form of Dangerous Behavior by Students.
I'll second.
Kate, thank you. Same thing, no change since last time. Comments, questions? All in favor? That's 4-0, thank you. Motion, please, with regard to EBCA.
I'll move to approve the second reading and discussion of policy EBCA Comprehensive Health and Safety and Emergency Management Plan, former title, Comprehensive Emergency and Management Plan.
I second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. Okay, again, no changes since last time. Comments or questions? All in favor? That's 4-0, thank you. And a motion, please, with regard to EBCC.
I move to approve a second reading and discussion of policy EBCC, bomb threats.
Second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. Same, no changes since last time. Comments or questions? All in favor?
I was just gonna
Oh.
ask, on the second to last page where crisis response plan is crossed out, is there supposed to be something in its place?
Yep, it should have been
Yeah,
It
it's-
should be EBC, it should be Comprehensive Health
Yeah.
and
Safety
Safety
and
and Emergency
Emergency.
Management Plan.
Yeah, so the old name.
Number 8.
Yeah, the old name is crossed off.
Yep.
The new name is not put in on the cross references. But the correct policy number or
Yep.
letter code is there.
Okay.
So Elaine, on the policy that we're just doing, EBCC, which is the bomb threat policy, under cross references, it says EBCA, and crisis response plan is crossed out. And we're gonna replace that with comprehensive health and safety and emergency management plan. I feel like a run-on sentence.
It does.
You know.
It's chunky, the way it reads.
Okay, anything else? All in favor? Thank you, that's 4-0. I'm gonna go a little bit slower before I say all in favor
Right.
going forward. Okay, motion please with regard to EBCC-E1.
I'll move to approve second reading and discussion of policy EBCC-E1 bomb threat report form.
Second, Jen.
Jen, thank you. Again, no change. Comments or questions? All in favor? 4-0, thank you. Okay, that's the second readings. Good work, Policy Committee.
Easy.
May I have a motion, please, with regard to the curriculum review format?
I move to approve curriculum review format.
A second, Rebecca.
Rebecca, thank you. So this is the presentation that Heidi gave us earlier this evening.
Yes.
Lays out a plan for how we'll review curriculum going forward. Any comments or questions about it? All in favor? That is 4-0. Thank you. Okay. Lastly, a motion, please, with regard to this revenue anticipation note.
I move to approve the vote to authorize issuance of a $2 million tax and revenue anticipation note form, and that the secretary file an attested copy of said vote with the minutes of this meeting.
I'll second, Kate.
Kate, thank you very much. We discussed this in Finance and Facilities. I think I gave a brief update on it in that report. This is basically a note that we would draw upon if we needed to. If our incoming revenues fall further behind, then we wind up having to, say, for instance, make a 3 payroll month with not enough money for 3 payrolls. Hoping against hope not to have to borrow against it. If we don't, we wind up paying a $2,500 fee at the end when we close out the note. If we do, and the interest we pay exceeds the $2,500, they'll waive the fee. I'm especially hoping we don't have to use it because the interest rate is over 5.5% now, where the last time we did this, it was much lower. So, but that's the cost of doing business, I guess.
Can I just,
Please.
just clarifying points?
Yes.
So, again, right now, this is money that's outlaid. This is part of local entitlement monies, this is grant monies, this is ESSER monies, the tail end of those things. So this is money that we've had to pay and we'll get reimbursed for. That reimbursement process takes some time. It's about $1 million plus right now of money that's out there that we are owed waiting on. And so this isn't a issue of spending too much. What it is just the timing of having the cash flow to be able to manage it. Literally, we've had 3 payroll, or we will have 3 payroll months very close together, and so that compounds this issue. In addition to that, we also had the $100,000 computer cart grant that we applied for and we were awarded. Part of that is you have to outlay the money in order to get the computer cart, and then they reimburse you. That's about a 6 to 10 week process. So even if we had the payroll, I would be concerned that we would be able to, I don't want to pass up that opportunity because of just the timing of everything right now. So just kind of wanted to put that out there. The other factor is also just working through the boiler situation. Just want to make sure that we can do things in the most economically way possible. So.
Questions or comments? All in favor? That is 4-0. Okay, that brings us to the end of our new business portion of our agenda. We are left with the building administrator check-in, and we do have one, yes, no? Nope. 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 We have none. Okay. So we're not checking in tonight. That brings us to the conclusion of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the meeting tonight.
I'll second.
Okay, Kate, all in favor?